Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Sports Corner with the Conn Man. I am your host, the Conn Man. I'm here with my great friend, Mr. Mike Samuel. Mike, how you doing today, my brother?
I'm doing well. How's things with you?
Well, Mike, I'm going to keep it real. I texted you prior to the show, as well as my producer, Keith Williams, and I told you that I had something very important to say, and I want to get off my chest, so I'm going to do that. I've been given the opportunity to do that and I'm going to do it. Mike, everyone in their life comes across someone who has made a major impact in their life and what they do. I have been blessed to have an individual who has not only touched my heart, but so many people in the New Bedford area. I call him the Red Auerbach of the New Bedford area. For those folks who do not know who I'm speaking about, his name is Mr. Peter Brittle. Now, to let you all know about a little bit about Mr. Peter Brittle, I was a young kid, didn't know much. I could play sports, but I really didn't know much. Mike, my dad never went to any of my games: football, baseball, basketball, soccer, ping pong, dodgeball. He never went to any of my games. And, I didn't have that father figure when I was growing up. And I went to Stang, and I did my thing. And then I went on to college. I did my thing. But anyway, after, I still really didn't have anything really going. I worked for the Department of Corrections, as you know. But I really didn't have anything going for me. Mr. Peter Brittle, for those of you who don't know, he took me in when I was a high school freshman, and I played the very first New Bedford basketball shootout, the very first one. We had teams from Washington, Chicago, New York, everywhere. I got an opportunity to play my freshman year. Then, after that, Mike, he saw something in me, and he said, well, Mike, why don't you come work with us? And I ended up working with him at the Monty's Associates. And he had me do the book for the games and the clock. And I was a shy kid, had about 8,000 pimples on my face. Very shy. I'm being honest. Very shy, very quiet, very shy. But he saw something in me and allowed me to grow as a young man, showed me the ropes, and I just want to say that man has meant so much to me. And for those folks who do not know who he is, let me tell you this. This man has enabled us people here in the city of New Bedford to be able to go and see the best basketball out of New England by far. The basketball shootouts, he did it for 40 years. I was right along with him by his side. And because of what he did to let me become more outspoken, gave me the confidence to do something I never thought I could do. I did the book, I ref, I did a book, I did the clock. Then he put me on the mic, and I was shy as hell. But, that enabled me to go on and do future things like become the color commentator for UMass Dartmouth, the color commentator for the Boston Frenzy, to have interest in doing the shows that I do right now. It's because of him. And what he did was, Mike, he left an olive tree for all of us, because back then in them days, folks, there were only, that I know, 3 African Americans who were refereeing in the city of New Bedford at that time. But what he did was, when his son Eric Brittle, who now is the CEO of True Bounce Backboards, he had asked Eric if Eric wanted to become a basketball official. And he took Eric under his wing, and Eric shot right up through the ranks and ended up, going through high school, junior college. And I saw his progression going to the NBA. I was with him every step of the way. We went to New York, come back 4 o'clock in the morning and all that. But Peter Brittle did, Mike. If you look at it now, back then, like I said, there was maybe 3 or 4 African-American Cape Verdean officials. What he did was he gave all of us an olive tree to learn, to make some money, to keep involved in the sport, to do what we enjoy doing and still be involved. And from what he did, and the olive branch that he gave to his son, and his son gave to all of us. Now, if you look around, we are all around AAU, high school, junior college, collegiate ranks, all because of Mr. Peter Brittle. And we've been doing the basketball shootouts for over 40 years. You heard me? 40 years. And I owe so much gratitude for this man. And yesterday, I went by his house, Mike, and he has dementia. And he had part of his feet amputated. So, I just want him to know what he meant, not only to me, but the city of New Bedford, because of what he stood for, not just for himself, but for all of us. He saw something in all of us, and he wanted us to be able to still continue in the game of basketball. And he saw something in me, Mike. Was I the best? Hell no, but I was the best to him. And he took me under his wing, and I had the honor and pleasure of working for him for over 40 years at Monty Playground. Best basketball players that ever came through. We had NBA ball players, Wayne Turner from Kentucky, Dwayne McClain from Villanova, Wayne McCoy from St. John, Walter Berry from St. John. I can go on and on and on and on. Michael Adams. I can go, Dana Barrow. I can go on and on. The list is Chris Herron. I can go on and on and on and on and on. But it was because of Pete Brittle. And one more thing before I go on, Mike, this is what I want people to know. I grew up in the hood. I didn't think I was poor, but I guess I really was. I don't know. I never thought I was. But anyway, after we graduated high school, I went on and played collegiate ball. But after that, Peter and his wife Avis, they would go to different vacation islands, and they went to this island called Anguilla. And Peter, being Peter, always promoting New Bedford and everything, Peter ended up meeting the president of the Anguillan Islands, and he touched base with him. He said, I'm going to bring a team from the United States to play against you guys. Came back to New Bedford, called me up and said, Mike, we're going to Anguilla. I said, who, what, where, when, how? Talking about. Anyway, he ended up hooking up with a guy by the name of Nelson Macedo, who was at that time was a mayor for a short term. Him and Nelson, I don't know what they did, how they did it. They ended up getting sponsorships, and a group of about 20 of us represented the United States, and we ended up going to Anguilla for $200. round trip. Our hotel was right next to the beaches, and my first ever time on the airplane. But that's a whole nother story. That's a comedy show. But I mean, he took a lot of us who never even been on an airplane, but he took us to do things of that nature. And then what he also did was he had the Anguillans come to New Bedford and play against us here in New Bedford. So I want to give the people an idea of how this man was and what he did for, again, not only me, but for so many people. And to see him in the state that he is in right now, it obviously brings tears to my eyes because he meant so much to me and a lot of people. And, you know, I wanted to do this on my show because he doesn't have Facebook or whatever. So I want to bring it to him, let him know how much he meant to me and others. And I want to make sure I bring it to him so he gets to see this. I mean, it was an honor for me to, if you ever go down Monty Playground, if you go to half court, you will see his name on the court. That's because of me and his son, Eric and Michael Grant. We did that in honor of him. And I've given him every award possible. But it's because of people like him, Mike, that I do what I do now. You know, I've had the honor and pleasure of broadcasting games and doing things of that nature. It's all because of him.
Mm-hmm.
All because of him. All because of him. And now I'm on this network with Freddie Henderson, Boss, and Key Williams, who produces the show, and allowing me to do what I do now. Am I the best podcaster? Hell no. But I do it from my heart, and I do what I do. And luckily, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I've been very fortunate to have Sam Jones on my show, Tony Bruin, Mike Jarvis, on and on and on, and Kermit Washington, as you know, because you was with me. And then in the future, you and I are going to be talking with Nate Archibald, Kenny Anderson. But it's all saying about me. It's all because of that man, you know. And it's tough. Again, I saw him yesterday, and he doesn't remember too much. He remembers me, thank God for that, but he doesn't remember too much. And dementia is really a debilitating illness. I've never experienced that with anyone, you know, and it's just very, very difficult to deal with. And I applaud his wife, Avis, who's taking care of him. And I know this is a sports show. I know this, but I just felt, and I told Key, my producer, I wanted to do this because it meant that much to me. And I want to bring this to him. I just want to thank the man because without him, there'd be no me. There'd be no whole lot of people now. A lot of people now, you see, they're refereeing, they're coaching, they're doing all these things because of Peter Brittle, who set that olive branch for all of us, white, black, Chinese, Jack, I don't care. That's what he did. So I owe a debt of gratitude to my man, you know, and if I do become successful, if I do get better as a podcaster, I don't know, but it's all because of him. And I just want to leave it at that. And now, Mike, you know a little bit about Mr. Brittle. Do you have anything to say? Because I'm bringing this to Mr. Brittle. So if you have anything to say, please.
Well, it's very nice of you to speak of him that way. And it's great to hear your history with him because I didn't know most of what you talked about. I do know Peter. I know his family a little bit. I know, I spent a lot of time with Eric as a young kid. I competed against him in high school for 3 years. A couple of years, we competed against each other at Bryant in college. And I know Peter's history with New Bedford, and I know his history with New Bedford Recreation Department and the summer leagues that you and I participated in. Yes. But it's very nice to hear what you're saying about him and what he means to you. I don't have that kind of relationship with him. I know him sort of peripherally from as a player and as a kid kind of going through the parks and getting acclimated to all of that. But I do know the impact that he has on the city and those people that participated in those leagues and the refereeing side of it. And just for me, it was always that access, right? I didn't know who was really behind some of this stuff. I just knew it was there. And all of a sudden I'm participating in it, and you start to learn who's around and who's actually helping others participate in this and giving me an opportunity to platform, my ability in those leagues and getting to know those guys through the leagues, through just playing pickup. You just have to meet people. And Peter was always around, and so I knew his daughter a little bit because she would referee some of the games when I was playing in the summer league. I have nothing but nice things and great things to say about him because all of my experiences with Peter were very, very good, and my experiences with Eric as a competitor and as someone that I looked at and kind of looked over my shoulder at when he was at Bedford High School, because he was the direct competition for a long time. And so so it's nice that you have those thoughts, and it's great that you speak of him that way, in the fact that he's promoted the area as well as he has and as much as he has, and as you said, given others the opportunity, right? Just presented it and just kind of see where it lands, and you take it from there, and giving you great access to other people and networking with others. So it's all great to hear. I'm sorry he's going through all of that. I wish him the best, and I wish his family the best.
Well, thank you for those kind words. And he will, when I go see him Saturday, he will hear this. And for those who are listening or watching, it'd be great if you could send some prayers for my guy, Peter Brittle. Again, because of him, I've given out over now almost 300 recognition awards. I do that because of people like Peter Brittle, because he cared about others and he wanted to recognize others. And that's what I do now.
I do have a funny story with him real quick.
Go ahead, Mike. You got it.
So a bunch of years ago, this was the last time that Jack Nabriga was running for New Bedford school committee.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the fundraiser I keep on forgetting this name in Acushnet, and it was loaded with people. And I spent the night just, again, networking and seeing people, Paul Walsh and Mike Verino and Eddie Rodricks and all these people running around just saying hello. And who did I run across at the end of the night but was Peter Brito. And I had walked by him, and he grabbed my arm and, hey, how you doing? Haven't seen you in a long time. And that's a big hug. And I kind of startled when I saw him because there was just so many people. You just kind of lose track of who was around. And we spent a little time together, and I was with my dad. And so kind of that, those people that you were, as a kid, when you were around and kind of looked up to and kind of guided you through some things, it was very nice to see him. And he was very, very nice, and he was very, very welcoming. And it was very funny because, like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. I'm like, geez, I couldn't even think of the last time I saw him, because it had to have been, I had to have been like 18, 19 years old. And that was probably, was that 10 years ago, 8 years ago that Jack Nabriga actually ran for the last time? So it was a long time ago, but it was very nice. And I'm glad he grabbed me, because it was just one of those people I had not thought of in a little bit. And, but he was, very nice and very funny that night.
Well, again, I thank you for those kind words. I'm sure he's going to be very happy to hear your words. Again, I'm going to say one more thing, and I'm going to let it go. That's my guy. Again, I have nothing but thanks, man, because people like Peter Brittle, your dad, Manny Costa, a lot of people from the New Bedford area, not a whole lot, but those individuals. I mean, here I am from New Bedford. I'm in the hood, in the West End, in the projects growing up. But yeah, I get the opportunity to go see Lou Hudson at Bunwood Park, JoJo White at Bunwood Park, Nate Archibald at United Front. Young kid like me, getting the opportunity to see them. And then, of course, thanks to your dad, got the opportunity to play against Dr. J. We'll go into that another time. I mean, who can ask for anything better than that? And then I have the best friends of the world. As you know, I got Dave Lato, and I got Eric and Mike Grant and all them guys. I'm just, I'm reminiscing, again, after seeing Peter in that condition, it just made me realize that, man, life's too short. And I want to be able to let people know how I feel before they go, and that's kind of why I do my recognition awards. I'd rather give them to people while they're alive as opposed to when they're gone. So I'm gonna
I
digress.
do think it's really cool, and I've only been aware of those recognitions and awards for the last couple of years, right? And I think it's really cool that you do that, and so I have great admiration for you reaching out to your friends and including your friends in this. And one of the things that you and I don't share is that from where I came from, in kind of getting plopped into New Bedford, into the competitions that exist with all those schools. A lot of my friends that I had and people that I played with, I don't really have those kinds of friendships like you do. I mean, I was very much the outsider in some of these situations. It's not a boo-hoo conversation at all, but your relationships with your friends that you've had for years, Mike. And I know them. I don't know them well, but I know their names, and I've been around them a little bit as either a teammate or a competitor. But it's very, very cool that you do that every year. And I certainly understand why and whose name it's under. And I get all that. And I think that's really great that you do that. But there is something to be said about recognizing those friendships and sort of that legacy that you have with those people while they're still here. Right. I think that's important, that, yes, we all have those stories of people that we've lost, and we tell those stories, and we look at those people fondly over time. But I think, yes, while people are here, recognize them, reach out to them, touch them, I think is important.
And Mike, I want to thank you for coming on my show as frequent as you do. And I got to let people know, Mike was a bad boy. And what really, not that I didn't respect your game, but when we talk and you talk about the people we both know from the Boston area, and you better have game or you're gonna get, and they spoke very highly of you, and everybody loves you, man. So congrats to you, man. You are the man. Just don't take my job, man. Don't take my job on this.
No, we're good. We're good.
All right. I'm in a better mood now. I said my piece. I'm good. Thank you for bearing with me, folks. I just had to get it out. And I'm going to be bringing this to Mr. Peter Brittle Saturday. I got to go see him again Saturday. I claim I'm a historian, and Peter is my history, and that's my guy. Without him, I would not have had the opportunity to do all the things I've done, and the friendships I have. Mike, come on, Dave Later, when he won the championship with Calhoun at UConn, I was in the parade. I got to meet so many people. Kevin, I got to meet so many. Mark Aguirre, David, Isaiah Thomas, B.J. Armstrong. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. And I would never been able to do that without the friendships that I have. And I've been blessed. I don't know why or how, but I've been blessed. And in future shows, people are going to know about, how lucky I've been as a person and how much I appreciate the things that have been presented to me. All right, Matt, I told you we're going to talk about NCAA. I digress. I'm good with that now. I'm okay. I was almost in tears, but you made me smile, so that's good. Now, the NCAAs, Mike, I'm going to tell you something real quick. Over 20 million, I don't know if you did it, over 20 million played in the ESPN bracket. Over 20 million. In the men's division, there are 0. And there were 6 as of last weekend. Now there's 0 in the women's division. Right now, I'm looking at my percentage of 70%. I'm ranking at 5.9 million. My points are 390, not very good on the men's side. And can you tell me what you think of this weekend's games thus far? Because I got something to say. But go ahead, you go first.
Well, I mean, up to this point, there's been some pretty intriguing stories, right? So you have the Princeton story, which is pretty cool as far as what's taking place there. The Fairleigh Dickinson story, while it lasted, was a great story, especially I think from my end as far as the league that they played in, because they're playing in the league that, I mean, you and I talked about this. They got in because Merrimack College could not.
Mm-hmm.
So they take advantage of that and they do well. You've got the Florida story coming out of this that they're playing tonight. So that's another big story. So I think there has been, aside from my bracket's looking terrible in the East and the South. I'm doing pretty well with the Midwest and the West, but the other side, wow, I just got, you and I talked last week where I got really taken out with Arizona, but subsequently it's been terrible. I actually have 2 teams left in that bracket. I have Michigan State and Alabama, but I don't have them going any further than the final 8. So, those stories that are coming out of that side where you're starting to see, as you and I talked, those schools that are able to actually compete at a really high level now, where I think the level has somewhat dropped because of the one and done. And then you have the transfer portal where everybody is sort of looking like the same.
Yes.
And then you start looking at Alabama, which, some people think is the best team in the country and favored to win. You have Gonzaga looming tonight with UCLA, which is going to be a great game to watch.
Yes.
So, I think those kind of stories where you're starting to get into really to the meat of this, when you start really having some really good competition, because the seeds, the records, and so I'm looking forward to tonight to see what reality comes out. And I'm actually looking forward to the entire weekend because I think you really start to flush this out where the better teams start to show up and perform.
I agree. Now, I mean, you're kind of sugarcoating it. I'm gonna go off. All right, I don't bite my tongue. Now you talked about Arizona.
Yeah.
You talked about Kansas. Now let me tell you something, Mike. You was a great player. I was the point guard, and rule number one, if you're a point guard, you never try to get trapped in the corner. Number one.
Right.
First and foremost, especially when you have a timeout, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
You have a timeout. Why wasn't the assistant coaches there to say, call a timeout, or the head coach? Number one. Number two, your point, I don't criticize anybody because, hey, they're good at what they do. That's why they're Division I, whatever. They're good at what they do. But you get a 5th-year point guard, 5th year, gets trapped in the corner. And now, what you don't know about me, I'm retarded when it comes to that because as a point guard, we had only one offensive play, Mike, but there were 75 options of it. I still remember to this day every single one of them. That's how mental I am. But anyway, as a point guard, rule number one, you never get trapped in the corner. Number two, there's 2 spots open on a court that can break any press. And as a 5th-year player, you should be able to know that. And if you do get trapped for some forsaken reason, you still have a timeout available. Why don't you use it? So there, I'm upset. And also mess my bracket up, which is really more important. But I mean, that's why I'm so upset. I just don't understand. And
well, when you and I've talked about just different tactics and strategy, I think this is where you run into the situation where, and not to go long and not to upset anybody, but the basketball IQ at a lot of levels is really questionable.
Yes.
And that's, I get upset when I watch because I'm talking to the television, trying to figure out why did that happen?
Yeah.
And I don't, what's really interesting, Michael, and I don't understand this. And we're going to go down this road. We're going to go down a really deep rabbit hole is how is it that these schools at this level, there's still a traveling call 5 times a game? How does that happen?
Good question.
I don't understand. These people have been playing basketball for how many years? How many games have they played? And we're still traveling. There's still a traveling call. There's 5 to 6 a game. And I get lost. I'm like, how does that happen? That's so you start including those turnovers on top of other IQ issues that exist within basketball and making decisions. I'm like, man, but you know what, Mike? I think, and I'm not sure of this, but my sense is because of the fact that we are dealing with more hybrid positions and not having true responsibilities and not having true skill sets, this is why those mistakes take place. Because, and I'm not kind of going old school and, I'm the old guy screaming on the lawn, get off my lawn. But when you have a point guard and that's in the responsibilities that are included, you should know what they are, right? To your point. You don't get trapped in a corner. You know your offense. You know where your vulnerabilities are, and you try to run away from them and you move your team to their strengths. Why that doesn't happen now? Because I don't think anybody's a true point guard anymore, right? Those positions are not there anymore. So when they say, "Oh, I want to go and recruit a 6'8" kid and I'll teach him," something gets lost in the translation because you're dealing with someone who's not handled the ball before, right? So if you're looking at a 6'8" kid, where's that kid playing? He's playing inside. Now all of a sudden you've asked that kid to be a perimeter guy. So you've lost the skill set of the guard or the guards. Everybody's handling the ball. Everybody's trying to run an offense, and that just doesn't work. So when you had those true specific responsibilities at positions, you would learn those, right? You would take that lesson and you would learn them from time and time again, and that would be your responsibility. So I think something gets lost in the translation through the recruiting side, and I don't want to keep banging on AAU, but I think some of that falls to that too.
Well, Mike, I totally agree with you. I think AAU is a major problem, if you ask me. If y'all want the elite, then it may be beneficial. Other than that, if you think, what does AAU do? Really? I mean, you go to an AAU team, you play 8,000 games, 8,000 days, but what does it really do? Unless you're up on that upper echelon, where, as you know, once you play AAU, you become rated. And they get you on a scouting report, and your sophomore class, your number 885. That's all that does. But you know, Mike, what I want to tell you too is, given the transfer portal, I think that's a major issue as well. A lot of teams, they don't stick around for 3-4 years, so they don't get to adapt and adjust and learn their teammates. Because you know, as a point guard, you are an extension of the coach, by none. You know, you got to be that leader. You got to be the one that, you know, demands respect, and you got to be the one that takes the load, because, you know, see, most players they worry about their own self. As a point guard, you got to worry about everybody else. You got to know where they want the ball, when they want the ball, what to call, who to call, eye contact, verbal contact. There's so much that goes involved with a point guard. That's why I'm a point guard, so I have kind of leaned toward that. But anyway, I think that's a major issue as well. Some of these guys, I don't get it. They make some very, I'm not going to say questionable decisions. And I mean, you know, as a point guard, you know, when things are, bring it back out, set it up, slow things down, and take. I'm in a different realm when it comes to that part. But
I would love to have the opportunity at some point to have a really intimate conversation with a head coach and ask them, when these things sort of go sideways and you're coming out of your offense and all of a sudden you're running in isolation, what goes through your mind as a coach? You know, if you know whatever your age of your coach is, as far as how do you teach that, right? So I keep on saying teacher because that's what head coaches are. Mostly assistant coaches are doing the teaching. So when you have this, what happens? How do you communicate this to your team as far as and really allowing that to take place, right? I think that's where I somewhat get lost is this just done off chance? Is this something that's built in that we're all of a sudden we're running isolation at this level, which is a little odd for me because I'm still used to, okay, how do we approach this as a team? How do you take your tactics and your strategy and apply it throughout the game, right? And how do you adapt to that? You don't see that. But when I did see this, Mike, where I saw a change was in the Tennessee-Duke game, where Tennessee became very, very physical with Duke and took them out of this because Duke was very much a finesse team and they're young guys. So I saw that change. You see a change in the Fairleigh Dickinson's team. That team that they were playing could not adapt to them, right? So they just kept on pushing it at them and saying, okay, this is how we play. How are you going to stop me? As opposed to a team that's at a lower seed adapting to a higher seed, right? So that team had enough will and enough skill to drive their tactics and their style of play up against a higher seed. You don't often see that, right? That seldom happens. It's happening more and more and more and more, to your point earlier about the portal, and that's what's taking place with teams, with players moving a lot. And so I think that's creating a different flavor as far as what the tournament looks like, not only on the men's side, but on the women's side too.
And you know what's funny? I'm getting to that later. I also did the women's bracket. I'm doing pretty goddamn good on the women's bracket. I don't know how, but anyway. But getting back now, we're going to talk again about the men's division right now. I want to bring up before we go into tonight's games. There's been some coaching changes that
Certainly
took
has.
place. So I'd like to get your feedback. We had my man, my friend, my good friend, Mr. Cooley, leave Providence to go to Georgetown. And that is under a lot of scrutiny because he is from Providence. He played at Stonehill, and we all know he went to assistant coach at BC for 10 years, and he went to Fairfield, and he also was assistant coach at UMass Dartmouth, and he said he got the job that he really wanted, which was Providence College, which is like 10 minutes from the Civic Center, whatever it's called now. And he got that job, and then spent 12 years there, had a winning record, and then, you know, when Pat Ewing got fired, I think although it was already in the works, he decided to take the offer to go to Georgetown. Now, the people at Georgetown, the people at Providence College were very upset because there's never been a coach who coached in the Big East go to another Big East team. And the Providence College people were very, very highly upset. I've been watching all very highly upset that he would leave Providence, where he said that was his home. And, you know, he made a big thing. It was a big piece on him on ESPN. And he was talking about how he's home and they brought him around the city. And he was, you know, all the things he did for the city as well, not only on the basketball court, but within the community. And boom, they lose, and he goes to Georgetown. What's your take on that?
I have a real problem with this because, the loyalty side of this is, and I understand he's been there for a while, but, you have to be careful about what you say and who you're going to offend if you decide to leave, right? So, college basketball coaches in general, right? They're very nomadic, right? They move around a lot. There are some that find a home and stay forever. And I can appreciate that loyalty that those guys have and women have. So I had a real problem with the fact that, he said what he said when he took the Providence job, and he really wanted that job. And I would think, right, that my problem with this is I don't think his job was done there. Right? I think, he's, as long as he's been there, it's always been sort of like scratching the surface with me, with that particular program, right? I think there's more work to be done there. And I don't know if he saw it as, well, I can't do any more here, right? I can't go out and recruit any harder. I can't do this. I can't do that. So I'm going to go to Georgetown where, he's, one of the things with, and I'm going to kind of editorialize here. One of the issues that occurs, I believe, with college coaching is that the college coaches look for the real challenge, right? They want to be able to take a program, whatever sport it is, and develop it, right? So they can actually have that line of success. Seldom, Michael, do you see a college coach, football, basketball, baseball, go to another school that's pretty successful, right? They're usually an issue as to why they're there, right? There may be there may be some probationary things coming from the NCAA. They maybe have some downturn. So they look at this as these challenges, right? And I think, as humans, I think we kind of look at that too, as far as, if you're leaving a particular opportunity, you're going to the next one because it's a large challenge, right? You have that enthusiasm and you have that motivation to kind of fix this, right? And do better and establish something. And I think that's what happens. So I don't know him personally. I'm certainly very much aware of him and what he's done at Providence. So I think maybe that's what it is. He's looking at Georgetown. Look, I'd love this opportunity to go there and fix this and help the university get back to where it was. Now, my question is he the right guy? I don't know.
Mike, I'm glad you brought that up because I want to pick your brain on this one. Now, as I said, he basically, I think his mind was already made up because the very next day he put his house up for sale. That kind of gave you an indication that he was gone. Yeah. And also, his daughter is a student at Georgetown. I don't know if you were familiar. Yeah, his daughter.
I wasn't sure. I didn't know that. No.
Yes, that's why I think that's a major reason why he went there. His
Mhm,
daughter is
mhm.
a student at Georgetown University. But Mike, nah, I'm gonna hit you up with something. I gotta pick your brain. All right, check this out. He had recruited a top 4 or 5 rated individual to come to Providence for next year. And guess what? He left. Their point guard this year, Bynum,
Mhm.
after he left, he went and he's in the transfer portal now. So my question to you is, and now we're going to talk about my cousin Rick Pitino. What do you do with the individual coach who went out of his way to recruit these individuals, and these individuals committed to come to play for you, and you decide I'm out? What do you think about that?
I you know, that is an inherent issue with college basketball. As I mentioned earlier, college basketball coaches are nomadic, right? They move around a lot, looking for the next challenge. Where the fallout comes and the collateral damages are those kids, to your point, Michael, who get recruited, who are there, this guy recruited me. I'm in my second year. I'm going to have another coach come in who maybe doesn't like my talents. Now what do I do? Right. And I'll use an example in not naming so many names here, but somebody that you and I both know fell into that situation, who was Marlon Burns.
Yes, yes.
Right. So that changed. So I know of that recruiting situation. I know the coach that was there, who was Gary Walters, who recruited him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he leaves. And then Joe Mulaney comes in, and Mulaney doesn't want half of the recruiting class. So Marlon ends up suffering through that. And
Yes.
by every indication, I think you and I have learned, Marlon was in practice tearing people up.
Yes.
Right. So he's expecting, I'm going to get some playing time and I'm going to succeed here. And all of a sudden, nope, it's not going to happen because this guy is not interested in me. So that's really difficult as a player, as Mike, and these guys, we've talked about this. These are young guys, right? 1-2 years out of high school. And now you're experiencing something which is really adult, that you have to figure out what you want to do. And back in the
Exactly.
day with Marlon, he didn't have any choices, right? So he's staying there. I can't transfer and lose a year of eligibility if I want to continue to play. So
Exactly.
now with the transfer portal, these kids can go. Now, if you're a coach coming in and you get a bunch of kids leaving, if you didn't have your finger on the pulse of what was going on in recruiting, you're going to be hurting now with a new coach coming in. So it's not so, Mike, it's not so much with Cooley leaving and the players that he recruited. You got a coach coming in, I might lose 5 guys on my team. Now I got to go recruit. And not everybody's Rick Pitino, where you can just push a button and recruits are going to fall in your lap. That's not
Exactly.
going to happen. So as much as it hurts those kids, and those kids have an opportunity now to figure out where they want to go and kind of right themselves, it's still painful, Michael, because they've committed, they've enthusiastically gone to this university to play for this guy and go to school wherever the school is. So what happens if you had a kid who's academically likes the opportunities at Providence College, now is not going to get the playing time that he thought he was going to get? I got to go search out another school, not just if I want to play, but academically fits what I want to do in my life. Because I'm not going to go play in the NBA, but I can certainly be a pretty good college player. Those are the kids that get hurt, right? Because they just don't know what to do. So I really disappointed in how all this works. Hopefully these kids can figure it out what they want to do. The kid that's coming in at the top recruit, he'll be fine. He'll go find another home. I'm sure there's somebody that's already been knocking on his door when Cooley left, if he has any interest in leaving or not. I'm not sure.
And also, it's official now. They did hire a person by the name of Kim English.
Mm-hmm.
He was the former George Mason coach. I have no knowledge about him. I don't know anything about him. But you know what helped Cooley out, because he was from the area. He got like you said, the pulse. He had the pulse. Now he's going to bring that pulse to Washington. And we got this guy named Kim English. Again, he's 34 years old. I know he's young. I don't know what he's going to do. But they signed him to a 6-year deal. I don't know anything about him. I guess I wish him luck. I don't know where else to go. But now, I wish him well. I'll be checking on that. But then we have another guy by the name of Mr. Rick Pitino, who was at Iona, was after he had the issue when he was at Louisville, he had a big issue. Coach overseas, got big money, by the way. Then came back and ended up coaching at Iona and brought them to heights because he's that guy, as we know. And now, before the season even finished, there was talk about him going to St. John's. So everything, the ball was already rolling. We all know that. The ball was rolling. So now I'm like, he is now at St. John's. And now, mind you, he's at St. John's, but he does, I guess he meets the public at Madison Square Garden. Does that, let's think about that. No, I guarantee you, the coach Anderson before him, he didn't have his, I guess, meeting the public at Madison Square Garden. Rick Pitino says, look, I'm going to have it at Madison Square Garden. Number one, Mike. Number two, he said, look, today, I'm sure you must know, oh, there's about 8 guys who he ain't going to be here next year. They got to go. I need players to fit my system. If they can't, they're out. Now, what about them players that went to St. John's? They went there for academics as well as basketball, and they're home like you and me sitting there, and they're gone. He's meeting with the team tomorrow, and what does he do? Because you know, collegiate scholarships are 1 year now. 1 year. Every year you got to sign a contract 1 year. So those individuals are only signed for 1 year, so they don't have a contract. They don't know what they're doing, and now they figure they're going to be there for 4 years or 3 years at St. John's. But Tim, before he even gets introduced, he's like, "You all got to go."
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Mike? Come on.
That's pretty rough, but that's, again, not to editorialize so much, but that's who that guy is. Right? That guy is about results, and I think sometimes the personal side and the personal touch gets lost. But he's there to get results. He's there to change St. John's and his reputation, kind of bring it back to what it was years ago, when the Big East was in its heyday. So, it sort of reminds me of just recently, right? The conversation that Deion Sanders had with his players.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's the same conversation, right? It's
exactly.
We've gone from, again, I mentioned earlier, young guys, just out of high school a couple of years, you're into a really adult situation, and you're dealing with a particular person who is all about results. And he knows the formula. He knows how to get there. He knows how long it'll take. And he'll know pretty quickly, if he, as you said, he knows already who's going to be there and who's not going to be there. And so, that gets to be really, really rough. And it's an adult conversation. It's an adult situation pretty quickly. And, not bringing this back to me, but that's sort of what I remembered when I was at 5-Star and he was there. And he's a real young guy, right? He's an assistant at Syracuse, but that's how he talked to his players. The guys that were playing for him, he spoke to them like adults, and he expected adult behavior from them and adult results. And that's been his whole move all the way through in his career path, right? You look at who those schools that he's developed, from BU to Providence College into Kentucky. You talk to those guys, Michael, you listen to those guys that talk about when Kentucky was on probation and Pitino went there, and how they loved him, and how they were treated. And they were going to play hard regardless, because they weren't going to a tournament. They knew that. They knew the limitations as far as what they could and couldn't do as far as going forward. But those guys loved that. But it was for a short period of time, right? So I think I was talking with someone the other day that there are certain coaches at various levels that you can't play for a long time, right? They're good in situations for like 3-4 years. After that, everybody gets numb because you can't listen to it any longer. But Pitino, as to your point, right? So if these kids are signed for a year at a time, that's difficult too, because kids are going to go if they're not liking what they're hearing. So he's taking the approach where I've had really good results. I am still interested in developing programs where you and I talked last, where Krzyzewski is not interested in that. I'm not interested in the portal. I don't want to have kids here for a year. I'm used to developing kids and having loyalty to the school. Those things are gone. So as much as the loyalty with coaches has disappeared over time, and we've talked about that, now you have players who have the opportunity to move on. And you have to kind of look at this and say, okay, what's the big picture? And the big picture is, to your point again, I'm taking this at a year at a time, because I don't know what's going to happen for me. I don't know what's going to happen with the school and coaching and all those moves. So you're asking kids to manage a lot, aside from being, and we talked about this last time, being a student athlete. Where does that fit? Right? That gets really diluted as time goes on, the way things are structured today.
And I'm going to bring back a little history that you might not be aware of. I know you're familiar with Marcus Wills.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, this brings the point alive. Dave is my best friend in the world, and he had just accepted the head coach at Northeastern, and Marcus Wills was deciding where he wanted to go to college, and I stepped in, and I went to bat for Dave as well as Marcus, and they heeded my advice, and Marcus went to Northeastern. And Marcus' father, Will, God bless his soul, trusted me because, we're almost family, and I was going to look out for his best interest. And I thought that at the time, Dave Lay was the head coach at Northeastern. And Marcus's first year, he was at Northeastern. They played against Duke. What's his name? Reddick. J.J. Reddick was playing that year. And that very next year, Dave was gone and left Marcus without nowhere to go. And I had to come back here to New Bedford, and his father was not very happy with me. I'll leave it at that. But it turned out well. Marcus ended up going to play at the University of Maine, had a great career, and everything worked out well. But I kind of understand that situation, man. The parents put trust in these coaches and believe these coaches, and they're saying, well, I'm going to take care of your kid. I may not promise him. I'm not going to make no promises, but, if he earns it, he's going to play, and then they just take off. I think I just think that's so bad, man, because, and when you're young, you're looking for that structure, and then that structure all of a sudden goes. And like you said,
that's really an uncomfortable situation for anybody, right? And if you're going to bat for someone and all of a sudden kind of the rug gets pulled out, that's like, oh man, what are we going to do here? I can recall some other situations with some other kids, making some really odd decisions and sort of choosing schools where they're sort of in over their head and are really unhappy about the choices they've made because they're now sitting on the bench, or they might be not even playing varsity at this point when they've gone to college.
I think I'm losing you, Mike. Oh.
No, I'm right here.
You there?
Yep.
Well, when he comes back, we'll get back to it. I wanted to emphasize about that's a tough situation for these kids who put their heart and soul because they believe in these coaches who are recruiting them, and for all of a sudden for them to leave, I think that's very detrimental to their psyche. They're not at that level where Mike, you there? We're good?
I'm right here.
Good. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I'm just mentioning, how tough situation is for these young kids who put their faith in these coaches and they decide to leave. And then you got this transfer portal, which I'm not really a big fan of. I mean, obviously, if you think they're not being treated correctly or you think you may have an opportunity to play somewhere else. But if you look at the percentages, a lot of these players that go into that transfer portal, grass is not always green on the other side.
Yeah.
So, that to me, that becomes an issue as well.
Well, I always wondered, and I sort of what came out of the Cooley thing was there tampering.
I wonder.
So, but Mike, think about it. When you have players who want to transfer, is there tampering going on with them?
And there's ways to get around it,
Yes. So I think that's a real curious point to actually start to look at. Okay, who's tampering where, and when does that get actually addressed? Going forward for everybody, right? So the NCAA seems to be on top of it with coaches, I think, to a certain point. Are they looking at players too? Because there has to be. Because why would you choose one school over another at some point to transfer? Okay, I'm not playing. I'm not happy. I want to go play someplace else. Okay, how do you know that school's open to taking you? So there had to have been conversations with somebody. If it's third party, fourth party that's taking place, it's not directly with the player itself and the student. So those are things that get to you start looking at college sports and you start looking at things sideways, like what's going on here? Where are the guidelines? Who's instructing this? And you lose something in translation as far as, okay, I'm a student athlete, I'm supposed to be going to school, I want to do this, now I'm supposed to play for this guy or a new guy, new campus. So, it gets to be very, very complicated, and I don't hear anything from the NCAA about doing anything about this so far.
All right, Mike, I got to hit you with this one. Update, UConn 71, Arkansas 46. Wow. Anyway, wow. I'm shocked. Wow. 11:26 remaining in the second half. Whew. Anyway, now I'm going to hit you with this one. I want to hear your take on this one. Now, you talk about tampering, things of that nature. Mr. Anderson, who was the head coach of St. John's, Mike, 2 years ago, he was named coach of the Big East Coach of the Year. They played real well in the conference championship. They lost by 1 or 2 points to my cat, if I recall, something like that. All of a sudden, he gets fired. And they get Rick Pitino in. Now, here's a dichotomy about this. Now, they owe Mr. Anderson $11 million if he gets fired without just cause.
Mm-hmm.
Keyword, just cause. There is no, well, as far as I know, there is no just cause. Now, if you go back about a few years, Mike, I don't know if you're familiar with this. Of course, I'm real close with Dave Lato. Dave Lato used to coach Kevin Ollie. Kevin Ollie played 14 years in the NBA, ended up being, when Calhoun's last year, Calhoun wanted him to be the head coach of UConn. And what he did was he slid Kevin Ollie in so no one else could get the head coaching job. Mm-hmm. And then Kevin Ollie finished that year. And the very next year, when he had Shabazz Napier, they end up winning the NCAA championship. Mm-hmm. And then 2 years later, he gets fired. And coincidental, Mike? I don't know, but I don't know. Anyway, he gets fired. He takes them to court and sued them for $11 million, which he won, by the way. And then he also won another $3.4 million after that. And right now, he's doing very well in Atlanta. He's the CEO of it's called the Elite something out of Atlanta. He's doing very well. Matter of fact, Dave coaches a team in that realm. It's kind of like the NIL. Mm-hmm. But now, Mr. Anderson, same scenario. He's owed $11 million, same thing as Kevin Ollie was. And he's saying he got fired without just cause. So, and then all of a sudden, Rick Pitino comes in. So you talk about I don't know. I mean, I'm not in the mix. What do you think about that?
Well, I do think it's interesting because I had heard, right, and you probably did as well, a month before the tournament starts, I started hearing discussions about Pitino going to St. John's. Right, so that was not unknown, right? So when you heard all that stuff, I was like, well, how is that going to happen? So everyone's getting ready for the tournament. Everyone's season is ending. So yeah, I think there are strings being pulled in the background.
Yes,
Michael, all the time. And especially when it's that I keep on referring to him as this guy. There's a level of reputation there, right? So that gets to be a little bit smoky for me as far as looking at him. And I have some hard feelings about him over what happened with the Celtics. I just can't look by that so much with him. And so, again, a great college coach, has great results, gets the most out of his players and so on. But when you're manipulating things behind the scenes at this point in your career, that's really disappointing, right? And so I have no facts to this, but yeah, I think the bread, excuse me, the breadcrumbs were there.
Yeah.
And, again, this is collateral damage in college sports, in big time college sports. And this is, again, a real adult situation where you've got now a university and an ex-coach. They're going to have to figure out what they're going to do with this. I'm sure it's going to go to court. I don't believe it's going to settle right away because I don't think the head coach should settle, right? Go after what you're due and you're owed, right? Get paid.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that just has a really bad precedent for the university over what they're trying to do with bringing a new coach in with his reputation, with his success. A lot of what takes place, Michael, is everybody's holding their nose on all of this and trying to move forward and trying to figure out what's the best for these universities and their players. I'm not so sure those decisions are being, that's not very wise. And so it's going to go on for a little while until the season starts next season, where you have, however they're going to do and whoever they're going to recruit, and that's going to get a lot of notice as far as who's coming in there. But yeah, I think everybody's holding their nose as they go through this because they know it stinks.
My final question to you, Mike, and your answers have been fantastic. You had mentioned something a week or the last time we were on, that you stated the fact that with the transfer portal and the NIL at the same time, it's causing a lot of problems at the same time. And I totally agree with you. Where do you think that's going to go now? With, again, you got the transfer. Now, people just flying everywhere. And given the fact of COVID, and people can go play their fifth year, you know what I mean? How much of effect do you think that's going to have on NCAA and incoming recruits, et cetera?
Well, I think you start to look at this, Michael, and I think it starts to look like almost like a professional, right? That you're trying to figure out where you want to land. And I heard this on a talk show where someone said, these kids are going to make decisions on not just the university, not just the coach, but the NIL side. Where can I make some money, make more money than playing on the East Coast? I'm going to play in the West Coast, or I'm going to play in this particular league.
Yep.
Wow. You're a freshman, you're a sophomore, and those are the decisions that you're making. And I think, unfortunately, you're starting to build that culture, Michael, with young people. And that's really scary. Where, again, I am not naive enough to think, oh, by the way, amateur sports is gone and all this other stuff. I'm not really sure it ever existed to a certain extent. But now it's so blatant. Everybody's doing it. And, the conversation I heard today was the kid out of North Carolina who's going to play his fifth year. And the conversation was, well, he can probably make more NIL than going to the G League. I was like, oh, geez, really? That's how we're going to interpret these things now.
Wow.
That's really disappointing, right? So again, I am not looking for a purity test on athletes and the decisions that they're making, but you're asking kids to make decisions based on money. And I'm going to play a year. If not, I'm going to transfer to another school. I'm going to make some more money. I don't know. It's really hard. And I'll use one other example. You look at what goes on with college football. And I was reading something about the University of Alabama, and I sent you a couple of things about that. And, Saban seems to be okay with it publicly as far as those kids making money and what they're doing. But that's because that university and that football program is just, a huge revenue base for them, and they're okay with it. Basketball is not like that. Basketball programs, even the big schools, UCLA's, North Carolina's, and Duke, yes, they make a lot of money. I'm not so sure they're okay with these kids doing this because they don't have any. I think I have to look at the rules and regulations to figure out, does the university sign off on some of this? Are they okaying this? I'm assuming they do, but still, it's another piece to this, right? It's another component that you as a coach, you as an athletic director have to figure out, where does this fit? How do we actually support this and not lose recruiting over it? Because if you lose recruiting over it, your programs are really going to be hurt. So you're in a point now where you don't have any choice. You just have to be careful about what you're doing and how you actually present it publicly, right? And privately with your students and your athletes. So I don't know. It gets to be I think it's really problematic for the universities. I think it's for the athletes. I think for the families where, maybe a kid can't go play in the NBA or play in the NFL. I can make some money here while I'm at the university to do something. I don't know. I don't know what the money looks like as far as those endorsements that are there. But some of these kids, Michael, and you and I talked to a couple of men that I'm sure when they were in high school, they were getting some inducement.
Of course.
Right? Were they getting clothes? Were they getting sneakers? Were they getting meal money? Whatever it happened to be, to kind of build those relationships. And I won't go into my stories on that, and I won't ever talk about those situations coming from my end. I can talk to you privately about that.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, but those things exist, right? Those things happen. And so, somebody from New Bedford, Massachusetts, those things happen.
I love
it. So, it's really interesting when you start looking at the bigger schools and what was going on with them and those opportunities and access, right? I think that's the biggest thing as far as the fear of this is the access to certain elements that get in the way.
Mike, this hour went by so fast. We could go for like 4 hours. You know what I mean? When me and you get together, you know how we roll. We're running out of time. But again, I want to thank you for coming on my show. Every time I ask you, you always come on. And, I want people to know, again, for those who don't know, what you're doing, how you're doing. I'm sure people want to get in touch with you because you're way more knowledgeable than me. So if they want to get in touch with you or they want to find out how they get in touch with you and what you're doing.
So I'm on all the social networks, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. MSemio is the handle. How I'm doing, what I'm doing. Still searching out some projects from my personal side, from my business side. Still in the middle of editing and writing. I sent you a couple of things about that as far as my projections on this. So real quick, hopefully an editor by June, publishing one way or another this summer. I can't put a date on that, but I'm saying this summer, 2023, hopefully I can get it published either through some publishing house, if all things go well and I can grow some thick skin on some of the critiques coming back to me, or I'm going to self-publish. One of the two.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading that, and I'm sure the folks out there who are tuning in, I'm sure they're looking forward to checking your book as well. Again, I want to thank you for coming on my show, as you always do. I want to let the folks know, stay tuned, because we got some guests coming aboard. We got some great guests coming aboard. And I'm like, I didn't tell you, I wanted to wait. We have another guest coming aboard in a couple of weeks. I think you might be familiar with him. He was a point guard at North Carolina. I think he was kind of primarily responsible for the Four Corners.
Oh,
I ain't gonna say the name yet, but I think you know what I'm talking about. I think, you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly who you're talking about. Yes.
So we're gonna be doing some things, and you're gonna be right with me. So, folks, stay tuned, because Sports Corner with the Conn Man, we have some fantastic guests coming on. I've been blessed to have the contacts that I have, and I'm able to get some of these guests come on. And I want people to know, see, the guests that I get on here, I have to deal with the NBA Retirement Players Association. You see, NBA ball players, they're part of a union. They're retired. They're still part of a union. So you got to go through the union. And I dealt with them. I've been in contact with them, and they're very tough, because they don't want one of their people going on other social media. And what they told me, quite straight up, it was like, Mike, we will not give you, because I want to get contact information. We will not give you the contacts because we want them for us. But now, if you can go get them on your own, we will support and promote what you're doing. So that's what I'm going to do. That's how I was able to get Kermit Washington and all that stuff. So, I mean, folks, stay tuned because we just beginning. Me and my boy Mike, we're going to be doing some things on here. We're going to have a great time. Mike, thank you for coming. Thank you for saying those great words for Mr. Peter Brittle. Folks, please tune in, sign in, give my boy, my man, Mr. Peter Brittle, a shout out. Wish him well. Send your prayers. Again, thank you guys for tuning to Sports Con with the Conn Man on the Sports Empire Network. Thank you, Key Williams, who produces this show. Again, Mike, thank you. I will see you next week, Mike.
All right,
we
Mike.
got so much to talk about. Thank you, Mike.
Take care. Bye-bye.
God bless.